State of the Rockies project is now in its 12th year. It started and remains as a student-faculty collaborative research project based out of Colorado College, focusing on the 8-state Rocky Mountain region from New Mexico and Arizona all the way to Montana and Idaho. We usually pick issues that are at the nexus of environment and socioeconomic issues. Very often we focus on public lands, but also water issues, ranching, oil and gas development. The Rockies region in particular, the 8-state Rocky Mountain region, is unique because it has such a diverse group of cultures, sort of different relationships with the land, communities that are very closely tied to the land. So you have everything from folks like the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, where there's plenty of coal, and then you have folks that are agriculturalists, sort of have a different relationship with the land. And so it's tough to kind of bring everyone to the table, and in particular to try and agree on anything. But some of the best success we have seen is when people are able to put these differences aside and actually kind of come to the table and agree that, we have 80% of, we agreed on 80% of issues. And that's, we've seen a lot of success in large landscape conservation initiatives. I think scale is a good, an important thing to look at in the West. Both ecological and cultural divisions and lines geographically. Certain people are more likely to come together rather than others, and no need to make the maybe situation more complicated than it has to be. Work with a more manageable scale and say, hey, we can agree with our neighbors in Wyoming on this issue, but maybe we should focus on something else here in Colorado. Something that we hear very often is to try and avoid the particularly divisive issues. There are many ranching communities in the West that have been very successful at grasslands conservation, predator mitigation, or predator livestock mitigation, but they'll often avoid issues like wolves or bison reintroduction. Again, it's back to the idea of agreeing on 80% of issues and sort of maybe skirting around the 20% to accomplish substantial goals in that 80%. Water in the West is also really interesting, and it's an issue that brings people together. Watersheds are much more an interesting boundary that people appreciate in the West, and it can act as a forum for folks to come together. They're in the same watershed, and there really is this sense of common waters in the West that we have to share that very scarce resource. And that's something else that in the West we deal with an issue of water quantity rather than more often on the East Coast you deal with issues of water quality. And that's something that we've seen has been another avenue for bringing people together. We've done a few video projects that have covered issues of water in the West. One of our most compelling videos is we had 2 recent Colorado College graduates go actually all the way down to the Colorado River Delta. So they actually crossed into Mexico, which is where the water, the Colorado River should reach the sea. Because it's all put to beneficial use, it actually just turns into a dry riverbed at the U.S. border, U.S.-Mexico border. And so that was some really compelling media that connected well both with the younger generation but also with policymakers too. And I think people were really surprised just to the visual product of the scene that's actually down there. For 2 years we focused on the Colorado River Basin and the issues of water supply and demand in the West, but also trying to tie in this idea of what does the next generation want? How does the next generation want to inherit their river? How do they want to manage it moving forward in the future? I think through some of the media projects we worked on, at minimum we reached out to that younger generation and said, hey, you have a stake in this. You should be aware of what's going on in the basin right now, because in 20 years it's going to be handed over to your generation to manage. So that's been something that's been pretty inspiring to me, to see these millennials kind of getting involved with conservation issues. We've had, I think, 2 big goals and successes in trying to engage a younger generation. First being this idea of bridging communities that are traditionally maybe not, that you wouldn't group together. Very often we try and approach the younger generation through the lens of outdoor recreation, whether that be through kayaking or rock climbing or even mountain biking. It's an avenue that the younger generation is familiar with, and that you'll find that they have many common values. It's very often that the outdoor recreationalist is also surprisingly a conservationist. And so that's something we've been trying to pursue. We did a number of projects in the Colorado River where we actually sent paddlers from the headwaters all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, 1,700 miles. And that really, I think, inspires the youth. It's an incredible story, but also it's something they can relate to, something they enjoy doing, being outside, being in the outdoors, and thus appreciating conservation in the West. I would say that we've also done a lot of work to try and use social and new media through film, through sort of social media networks, to try and engage students on a level that they're maybe more familiar with, or they're more used to getting news and information on. So we've really tried to do that, which I think is the conservation community is certainly tuning into, becoming more familiar with, figuring out how to address that younger generation through their sort of this new media. But it's something where we can still, I think there's still a lot of potential for tapping into this younger generation. I'd also say that the model the State of the Rockies project uses, which combines student-faculty collaborative research with professional development, actually getting them out in the ground, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with organizations, public agencies, has been very productive. And we've had almost 50 alumni now go through the project, the State of the Rockies project, and have had great success in the conservation, environmental, natural resource fields.